All right, so today we're going to talk about a really important paper that asks a tough question about where AI is headed. It's called On the Dangers of Stochastic Parrots. And wow, does it put one of the biggest trends in tech right under the microscope. And this is the big question, right? Can language models actually be too big? You know, in a world where bigger is almost always sold as better, this paper just stops and says, hey, wait a minute, let's actually think about the hidden risks here. So to really get why this question matters, you have to look at what's been happening in AI for the last few years. There has been this insane all-out race between the big tech companies and research labs to build the largest language models possible. It's a sprint, really, fueled by this bigger is better philosophy. And the scale of this race, it's just wild. I mean, look at this. In 2019, a model like BERT was top of the line with 340 million parameters. Seemed huge at the time. A year later, GPT-3 comes along with 175 times billion. And then by 2021, we're talking about models with over 1.5 trillion parameters. This isn't just gradual growth, it's an absolute explosion. Okay, so why? Why is everyone doing this? Well, it's pretty simple, actually. For a good while, making a model bigger has consistently made it perform better on all kinds of tests. And as long as that's true, the temptation to just keep scaling up is, well, it's massive. But this paper argues we really need to start looking at the hidden costs.
And that brings us to the first big risk the paper highlights. This race for size has a hidden price tag, one we almost never talk about: the staggering environmental and, financial cost of training these things.
Just look at that number: 284 tons of carbon dioxide. That was the estimate for training just one large model. To put that in perspective for you, the average person's carbon footprint is maybe about 5 tons a year. This one training run is like the lifetime footprint of several people all at once. Still not sinking in? Okay, try this one. Just training the smaller BERT model, not even tweaking it or anything, pumps out as much carbon as a passenger flight from New York to San Francisco. And this is where the paper connects the dots to social justice, and it's a really powerful point. The environmental harm from all this energy use, it doesn't affect everyone equally. It disproportionately hurts marginalized communities, the very same people who are least likely to see any of the benefits from this technology. So you've got the environmental cost, but that's not all. The second huge risk is hiding right inside the data they're fed. These models are trained on these unfathomably huge piles of data, scraped from the internet. The question is, what's actually in there? You'd think, right, that if you just scrape petabytes of data from the web, you'd get this amazing, diverse snapshot of humanity. But nope, the paper argues it's actually the opposite. Just having more data doesn't make it diverse. In fact, it can just amplify one specific dominant worldview. For instance, a lot of the data for GPT-2 came from links shared on Reddit. And at the time, Reddit's users were, well, let's just say, not exactly a reflection of the whole world, mostly young guys. So the AI's entire worldview was being shaped by this really narrow slice of humanity. And here's the really tricky part. Even when people try to do the right thing and clean up the data, it can totally backfire. So, a developer might try to filter out a list of bad words to get rid of hate speech, but that same list might also erase conversations from, say, LGBTQ+ communities that have reclaimed certain words. So you end up with this filtered down, dominant viewpoint getting stronger and stronger, while other important voices just get silenced. And all of this, the crazy environmental cost, the super biased data, it all leads us to the absolute core idea of the paper. It's this brilliant metaphor for what these models really are. They call them stochastic parrots. So what on earth is a stochastic parrot? Well, stochastic just means based on probability. So a stochastic parrot is a system that's just stitching together words based on what it thinks is most likely to come next. It is incredibly good at mimicking human language, but, and this is the most important part, it does it all without any reference to meaning. It doesn't get it. It doesn't understand a single thing. Yeah, think about it like an actual parrot. It can learn to say "I love you" perfectly, right? But does it have any idea what love is? Of course not. It's just copying sounds. Well, these AI models are doing the exact same thing, but on a massive scale with trillions of words. They're masters of grammar and style, but there's just nothing behind the curtain. And the real danger is when we humans forget that. We are hardwired to find meaning in language. We see text that sounds fluent and we just assume there's intent and understanding behind it. And that can have absolutely devastating consequences in the real world.
like in this case, where a man's simple good morning post was mistranslated by an AI as attack them, and he was arrested. The system sounded confident, but it was just dangerously wrong.
So, after laying out all these pretty serious risks, the paper doesn't just leave us there. It actually offers a path forward, a more responsible way to think about AI development.
And they basically lay out 4 key things we need to do. First, prioritize costs. Think about the environmental and financial impact before you even start building. Second, it's about quality, not quantity. Let's invest in carefully creating and documenting datasets, not just making them bigger for the sake of it. Third, we have to actively think about the values we're building into these systems. Who is this for? Who could it harm? And finally, let's shift the entire research game away from this obsession with size toward more meaningful ways of measuring progress.
Really, what it all boils down to is a huge shift in how we think about building this stuff. It's about moving away from that move fast and break things mentality and toward a culture that builds with real forethought and care about the impact it's going to have on the world.
And that leaves us with this final, really important question. We obviously have the power to build these massive AIs. That's not in doubt. But the paper forces us to ask, with that power, what is our responsibility to not just build them bigger, but to build them wisely?